Hello, happy Wednesday, and welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. I'm Cherie Burton, and this is a podcast for women who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are. Today is Kate Jaramillo. She is an awesome expert on how to heal your relationship with food, all things fitness. We have a great discussion about finding a way to eat that works for you. Before we get to that, I just want to remind you that I have a Feminine Boss School that I'm super excited to launch on July 22nd. So there will be forthcoming details in the Women Seeking Wholeness Facebook group, as well as on my homepage of my website. Now, this is a course that I designed, a 4-week course in how to get you into the way of goddess confidence and step into your soulpreneur path. Soulpreneur meaning whatever your soul wants to do in this day and age when we have so much chaos and confusion and uncertainty, to help heal people essentially, and how to use your gifts and talents that way to direct them towards your knowing and doing in your human female form as an empowered feminine creator. So watch for that, and also be watching for our next round of Fix Your Marriage in 40 Days that I'm doing with my partner, Dimple Thacker in the UK. We had 55 couples go through our first group, and we're getting ready to launch the next. So you can find that also on my website to get on the wait list for the next go round. All right, so let me introduce to you Kate Jaramillo. I was a guest on her podcast, and we talked a lot about freedom. We talked about how our souls are always trying to communicate with us and get our attention through body signals. But today we're talking about freedom with food and eating without guilt. Freedom has kind of been my theme this last few weeks, heading into the July 4th holiday. How do we eat mindfully, intuitively, and with self-acceptance rather than heaping up servings of guilt and shame on ourselves? This episode will reframe the way you talk about food and think about nutrition. So all the dieting rules are going out the window. Kate Jaramillo is a mother of 4. She's a wellness expert, a business mentor, and host of the Straight Up Wellness podcast. So together, we are going to discuss freedom, again, my theme right now, with food and eating. Kate, welcome to my show.
I'm so happy to be here with you. I love chatting with you.
I know. I loved being on your podcast, and I learned a lot. Actually, after I got done talking with you, I was like, I need to look into this a little bit more, because I've been teaching about eating intuitively for years, and hormones and just the whole thing linked with mood and food. I think what I would love to explore today, and I know that many listeners get triggered around even just talking about nutrition or eating, because number one, everyone's inundated.
Totally.
And number two, we've looked past just our own soul voice communicating to us when we eat. So I want to talk about that. But also just we're moving at a time on this earth where we literally need to give our bodies what it needs to even survive. It's not just even about survival. It's why wouldn't you want to take this body you have and have the best energy and reserve so that you have built up what you need so you can serve other people and do what you need to do on this earth.
Yeah.
But
100%.
Before we get into that, I want to share with our listeners kind of how you got into this. Why is nutrition your thing?
It kind of wasn't for a little while, and I was able to outrun a bad diet because I've always been, maybe genetically blessed or have really been into fitness. I like working out. So I just kind of was able to enjoy eating whatever. And I really love food. I love going to a restaurant, and I've always been super fearless when it comes to trying new things. I mean, for the most part, there are just certain things that bleh, I'm not going to try. But I've just always really enjoyed the experience of being at a restaurant and dining out and trying different foods and new things. But it was kind of as I just fell more in love with food, I fell more in love with cooking and preparation of ingredients and choosing certain ingredients. I used to live in Philadelphia, so we had the great Italian market by us and just really cool different artisanal markets that I could buy great ingredients from. And then when I became a fitness instructor, people would always ask me what they should do with nutrition because it's never, I don't think that there's anything more frustrating than like busting your butt at the gym, showing up all the time and just not getting the results. And
Yeah.
nutrition really does optimize your results. So because people were asking me so much about it, and I just decided to pursue and furthering my education in nutrition and getting certified through Dr. Josh Axe and his Institute of Nutritional Leadership. And so that I could provide the right guidance for people. I was also involved in a like health, fitness, multi-level marketing company. And I had worked with a group of clients who it was like, no matter how much they worked out, how far they cut down their calories, they just couldn't lose another pound. And so after I had done my nutrition certificate and I was turned on to like the ketogenic lifestyle, I put together my own program and I asked my clients if they would be willing to test it out as like beta testers. And 9 of them said yes. 6 of them finished an 8-week program that I designed. And in that time, like the average amount that these women were losing was like 20 pounds after having been stalled for months. So, yeah.
What do you attribute that to? What was the magic with that?
Well, I think we automatically think when we need to lose weight that it is all about calories in and calories out, which is why we work out so hard and cut our calories down so low. But I think our body goes into starvation. So we end up preserving extra fluff, because it's like, oh, well, I don't know when you're going to feed me again. And what you have been feeding me isn't enough to, it's not enough energy for me to put out all the energy that you are exerting. So I'm going to store this. I don't know when I'm going to be fed again. And, there's obviously water weight because carbohydrates are, they cause us to hold on to water. And anytime that you can cut out sugar and processed foods, you're just going to transform your health. You are. So I think it was a matter of the right foods, enough calories, and releasing a lot of water weight that women were able to have such a transformation.
Yeah. I kind of have dove into paleo and keto and intermittent fasting. And I don't know how you feel about intermittent fasting, but to me, it's the bomb, but it kind of flies in the face of what you just said in terms of our body not knowing when we're going to be fed again, because I've interviewed a couple of people on the podcast who talk about the old science is that if you don't eat for a stretch, your body holds on to fat. However, with intermittent fasting, it seems to do the opposite because it gives your body time to digest and your cells are like, oh, thank you, thank you. So do you want to talk about the difference?
I love intermittent fasting. I love it. And it's something, but I believe that it's something that needs to happen gradually instead of making all these changes to your diet and your lifestyle at once. I feel because it's so stressful. And the more that our bodies are under stress, the more that we'll hang on to that fluff.
Yeah.
So what I have found in working with a lot of clients, especially, in working with them in the ketogenic lifestyle realm, is once they become full and they naturally find that their blood sugar is balanced, they'll end up skipping a meal, normally breakfast. And then I get these like messages like, I skipped my meal today. Is that okay? I'm like, yep. You're just finding yourself full. And you're finding your blood sugar balance. And that's really what we want. But in that time then, within our eating window, we certainly want to consume enough calories and from the right sources, from like whole food, good quality sources. But I love intermittent fasting. But you know what else? Like, I feel like, for example, today, I typically fast for, 16 hours and I have an 8-hour feeding window naturally. Like I don't even try to do that anymore. It just happens naturally. Yeah. But today, after I did a heavy leg workout, I was like, you know what? I'm really hungry. And so what I did was I had like a scoop of a paleo protein powder in some unsweetened almond milk. And it was amazing. I felt great. I still feel great. I think my body needed it and my muscles were calling for it for recovery.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I have been doing intermittent fasting because I've never been a breakfast eater. Like some people are.
Me too.
Some people are like, my daughter, Savannah, she's 21. She's really thin. She's always starving in the morning.
Mhm.
I'm not, I never, even at her age or even as a teenager, I was like forcing myself to eat breakfast. And I was like,
Yeah.
why are all my friends able to just be ready to go? But it's so interesting, just like what you said, even though I largely only eat, eat between say 11 or 12 p.m. and like 7 or 8 p.m. That's just my
Mhm.
window of intermittent fasting. Um, there are times where I don't know if it's just because I'm under more stress or whatever that I will need to eat something in the morning.
Mhm.
So I really think what we're talking about is just a flow with what your body, listening to your body and saying,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'm going to go on this like rigid plan and feel like a failure. And
Right.
I think that's what those plans set us up for. So when we say I eat paleo or I eat keto or I eat this or I do intermittent fasting, also knowing that that's the template that makes me feel good in my body. But also, there are times that I go off that path because my body is
Yeah.
in a season where it needs something else.
I could not agree with you more. I feel like when we say things like I'm keto or I'm paleo or plant-based or I intermittently fast, we use that to describe ourselves. Like we're self-identifying with a way of eating or like a certain dogma. And then when we go off of that path, because we're listening to our bodies, it's calling for something else. We do feel that like, oh, but I can't tell anyone that because then like,
Mhm.
the nutrition police are going to come after me. And I'm so glad too that you said that some days you just feel like you need something else. I know for a fact that my needs change daily based on like how much I sleep, what my activities are, if I'm under a certain amount of stress, if my son is nursing more frequently than not. But I know that my needs change daily. And I was noticing too, well, like a couple years ago when I was very diligent about tracking my macros and hitting certain numbers like perfectly, I would do it for maybe, a couple days in a row, but then I would feel ravenous and I would like eat double or even sometimes
Binge,
triple the amount of calories.
the binge
Right.
cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, because my body, I was just starving it or just not giving it or not respecting the fact that it has different needs daily. Because I was I was chasing a number. I was
Yeah.
chasing like a philosophy. And
And
it's
I
like, I
think
just
that we
can't.
can get really hung up on the scale. Like I have a
Yeah,
scale in my bathroom. I know this is like a conversation forever with women. What do you do with the scale? I know for some people it's a healthy motivator because
sure.
it gets them in like this flow of like not I like you said, you don't want to identify with the number or over
Hmm.
identify with that or over identify with, hey, this is the way I eat. It's not you.
Hmm.
It's just an aspect to your lifestyle. So what is your relationship to the scale? How does it
I
demotivate
don't
or motivate
have
you?
one. We don't own one.
Really?
No, we don't own one. And we haven't, I honestly can't even tell you like when the last time we actually had a scale in the house was. In fact, I think the only time I'm ever weighed is when I go to the doctors. And I've had an unhealthy relationship with the scale, and I've had a healthy relationship with the scale. Right now, we don't have it in the house. We
Mhm.
haven't for a really long time, and I haven't missed it. I am, a mom of four, and three of my children are girls. And one of
Mhm.
them, my stepdaughter, is about to turn 13 this year, and I notice I've heard her say things that reference her body size or I wish I was as skinny as. And it makes me really glad that we don't have a scale in the house. Um, because
Mm.
it, as much as I want to talk to her about that, and I do, and I always tell her that she's got a beautiful body and she should always be proud of it. And I think that there is something to be said about body neutrality, like looking at your body and if repeating positive affirmations doesn't feel real to you and like you're just standing there lying to yourself, you can step back and have this body neutrality of like, hey, like this is my body. It gets me around and that's awesome. It allows me
Mhm.
to do XYZ instead of like, I have I am a size 4 and I am at the perfect weight when you might not be, and that doesn't feel authentic to you. But
I love
I'm
that.
kind of coaching her in that body neutrality and not getting tied to a number. Even my husband gets a little bit weird about
Yeah,
when he like
men,
weighs
it's true.
himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I tell him, and I've said this to like even my followers, I'm like, I don't pay attention to the number on the scale. I personally don't even measure myself, even though if a client was looking to lose or just track a certain way, I recommend measuring themselves. I actually look at how much weight can I lift right now? Because I
Mm.
really want to get stronger. Like I really want to move up in weights in what I'm lifting.
I think that that's a healthier I'm glad you brought up young girls and developing adolescents moving
Mhm.
into adulthood. It's like I'd rather teach them to be strong, like you're saying. I
Yeah.
would rather measure what they can quote unquote lift or how their body's feeling. When you
Mhm.
talked about body neutrality, that reminds me of what I teach with emotional healing, which is emotional neutrality, coming into
Mm.
neutrality with people and relationships, just neutralizing the situation in general tends to be the starting point for healing because it's not like you're teaching people to disassociate from their body because we want them to be
Mhm.
fully embodied, but at the same time, not letting those diagnoses, labels, and titles define us in the body. So, for instance,
Right.
with depression, like you wouldn't say, well, if you're sitting in a therapist chair, they would say you're depressed. You fit the
Mhm.
diagnostic criteria for depression. But what you have to say to yourself is, I am not depressed. I have depression in me. I'm
Mhm.
experiencing depression. Same with addiction. And that's why I really have a hard time with the whole, um, I love NA and AA and what and the spiritual process it is for
Yeah.
people. But if you're always saying, I'm an addict, I'm an addict, I'm an addict, and like you're just
Right.
reinforcing that. Same with
Right.
weight. I've had so many people, and I'm sure you have too with the work you do. Especially when I was doing pageant training for people, I coached a lot of women who won beauty pageants. And I
Mm.
was also in that world for a while as a title
Yeah.
holder. And it was always like, my genetics are this. It's harder for me to lose weight, or I tend to hold
Mhm.
on weight, or I have diabetes in my family, or this, or I have big bones, or like there's all these labels that we come up with as women to really put us in a box around our bodies instead of looking at it as empowerment. It's I'm fat. Like that
Right.
fat word, like I don't even think we think about it. It's
Mhm.
just so programmed in our psyches. I'm fat. I look fat. Even women who are consciously like me, like who I'm just consciously like, that's a horrible thing to say to myself, but I have to consciously work at that.
Oh,
Um,
same. Me
yes.
too. I look in the mirror and I notice my eyes zoom in to the areas of my body where I just have a parking spot, like, and I've had it my whole life. And I remember, I feel like in like 10th grade, I became like conscious of the fact that like where I carry weight would be like the love handle area. And anytime that I gain weight, it goes there. And I have truly never been successful in completely losing that. Even when I dropped down to like 13% body fat and lost my period, I still
Mm,
had a little bit of like that was the area that my eyes and it, like
mm,
my eyes always zoomed into. It's like
mm.
that is where my
That's
body
our
goes.
default programming is with anything, is to zoom into what's
Yes.
lacking or what's not
Yep.
enough. So, how do we change this conversation, this mental? Because I know you work a lot with
Mhm.
mindset,
Yeah.
with body image and mindset and eating. How do we move away from, I guess, what we're really talking about is freedom. You and I talked about this
Yeah.
before. Like, our souls want freedom. And
Mhm.
here our souls are sitting in this body that has these limitations, or
Yeah.
we've been told what to do, or we've been programmed, or all these things, right? So there's a part of this just, I think some people, and I would include myself in this, I go through seasons where I'm like, oh, to heck with that. I'm going to eat whatever I want. And then my
Mhm.
soul's like, well, that's not working for you so well because you feel like crap. But
Mhm.
it's just this rebellion against being told what to do.
Absolutely. One of the biggest turning points for me, and this has been relatively recent, like it's only been like maybe 2 years, is when I stopped calling food junk or crap or good. Like
Mm,
it was, we just talked about neutrality, like emotional neutrality. There's food neutrality. It's simply food. And a friend of mine said this to me, and it was so profound, and it totally changed the way that I think of and talk about food, especially with my kids, because I would say things like, they would want something from school or whatever. I'm like, oh no, like that's junk, or Nana and Papa will feed you like junk or crap or something. And so they were calling it that, and she was like, oh, in my house, we call things always food and sometimes food. And I was like, that's
Oh,
amazing. So that's what I do. Like, we have always food in our house. And anytime that my kids are hungry, they can go for anything that they want in our house because it's truly always food. But when they go to birthday parties, or, we're outside of the house and they want ice cream or something like that for dessert, like we obviously make sure that they're eating their plate first, because our thing is like, look, if you've got, with as far as dessert goes, like if they didn't eat their food then and they want dessert, we're like, well, if you still have room for food, because we're trying to not associate food with reward,
mm-hmm.
we say like, well, if you still have room for XYZ, then finish what you have, and then if you still have room, then let's get like sometimes food.
Mm-hmm.
It's worked really, really well for us. Now, we have to reprogram ourselves. And I know that you do
Yeah.
this a lot with your clients. Like, this is years of us. And I really, truly believe that this is like most women. We have spent years being on a diet. We have spent years, at least quote unquote, watching what we're eating. And that's like, it's, so we think of food in a certain way, and it's so because we've spent so many years doing this, there is like something that we have to do now to take a lot of time to reprogram and find that neutrality, and not associate an emotion to food, but just understand that, hey, this is fuel and this is what works for me.
Right. I love it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when you say we've been programmed to watch our weight, watch what we eat, all these things, it's like this hyper vigilance, and it becomes so unhealthy because we obsess. I'm kind of out of that part of my life, I think, but I definitely went through it where I was just every little thing was like, and I was actually taught by a teacher of nutrition to say to yourself, is this bite going to harm me or help
Yeah.
me? And it's like, I can see that, but also I can also see how damaging that could be.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. And that's like what we start think, oh my God. And then all of the
Mhm.
guilt that we attach to food, and the shame that we feel. Oh my gosh. Like, from identifying with, being quote, being keto, like that's how I was self-identifying. Like, I'm keto, like having that for so long. I have to tell you, like, one day when I was like, I just wanted a banana, and that's typically not on like a keto plan, right? If you're following a strict ketogenic diet or lifestyle or whatever, because bananas are high in carbs and they're high in sugar and all the things. But I wanted a freaking banana, and I ate it, and I felt guilty. And I was like, geez, like, it's not like I ate a Twinkie, but I shouldn't even feel bad about that either. But it's a freaking banana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
It's
oh,
it's it's like you could make some ways of eating like a religion.
yeah.
And what happens is like then you literally feel like you sinned. And
Yes.
I
Oh my
think
gosh.
that's
Yes.
where it goes wrong. And I think for me, this is just a lot of the clients that I've worked with who are really struggling with body image and eating issues. I'll just tell you this quick story. So I was working with a woman who was training to do the Mrs. Utah pageant, and
Hmm.
she was just a great student. Everything that I recommended, she was on it. She was getting up at 4 a.m, and she was having these amazing spiritual experiences, and she goes, but the one thing is like, I'm addicted to sugar and I can't seem
Mm-hmm.
to curb this. And so I knew that she was a super spiritual person. So I was like, well, then put it into your prayer, put it into your practice, figure out, I can't tell you um, what to do there. That's between, like, this is your body chemistry and this is your, you got to get an
Mm-hmm.
answer that works for you. I could tell you all the textbook stuff, like this, that, and the other. And I know there's a billion books on how to like stop your sugar. But for her, I just told her to do it as a spiritual, take it to God. So
Yeah.
she came back to me. She's like, oh my gosh. She goes, this is what happened. She goes, I did exactly what you said. I put it into like high priority on the prayer list.
Mhm.
And it was like, just wait. She's like, the answer I got was just wait. So she's like, sure enough,
Mm.
later that afternoon, she's like, I was craving sugar so bad. So she's like, I made some brownies for the family, right? That's just
Yeah.
some women's way of like making it for themselves.
Right.
And she's like, I was on my fourth brownie and I was literally standing over the stove and I had this thought come into me, which she believes came from spirit that said,
Yeah.
you're trading your birthright for a mess of pottage, which is actually a phrase from the Bible about
Mm.
Jacob and Esau, but selling your birthright. And then she felt guilt. And then it was like, no, that wasn't meant for you to feel guilt. And then she just got what can only be described as a download, which was basically if somebody is offering you something out of love and kindness, like a treat, take it
Mhm.
and eat it, and you will be blessed by that. But don't find opportunities to go seek it out or create
Mm.
that treat, right? And she
Mhm.
goes, for whatever reason, that's what I needed because I had made brownies for the family, which is just a way of saying I was making them for myself.
Right.
And I was seeking it out. You know, I was basically creating a space where I was making it happen. And I was like, oh, that's really profound. So she largely felt she ended up winning the pageant, by the way, and she
Oh,
looked
wow.
amazing. But for me, I remember that. And also what I have come to know, because I don't know if you ever heard of the book Nourishing Wisdom.
Yeah. Mhm.
He talks about how whatever energy state you're in while you're eating more of that emotion or that energy. So if somebody hands me a treat and I'm not in gratitude, I'm in body guilt and shame and how many calories is this
Mm.
and whatever, I'm going to metabolize that treat differently than if I took
Yeah.
it with gratitude and just loved it and ate every bite like it was this sensual experience or just yummy, nourishing, high vibe, right? So the
Yeah.
vibrational state you're in as you're consuming food has everything to do with how it metabolizes in your body.
I totally believe that because and in nutrition school we learned so much about mindful eating, and how that impacts your digestion. Like so many of us are, and I'm so guilty of this as well. Like we're rushing women, and we sit at our computers and we're just like eating lunch and we're trying to eat it really quickly, or then we bring out a snack or something like that. We just kind of like constantly put things in our mouths while we're typing away. There's no mindfulness involved. There's no gratitude. There's no being in the moment and just enjoying, what you're eating. So we are just simply not digesting foods that well. It's throwing off like our regularity, and like being able to go
Yes.
to the bathroom. It's certainly adding to like how we're able to use the energy that we're consuming. Yeah. So I love the idea, and I don't, you know, why my family has gotten away from it is, sitting down, praying over our food, being grateful, and then, sitting together and consuming it as a family. You
Mm,
know what? I have had to build in our lunch hour into my Google Calendar so
mm,
that I know. So my husband doesn't eat dinner. Like he's got some like acid reflux issues, and he has for his whole life. So past a certain time for him, he doesn't feel good to eat. And because of COVID, his office has been closed. So he's working from home. So all of us are home, and we've been able to, for months now, make eating lunch together a priority. But I block out that time, and it includes both time to like cook if I haven't, prepped anything, and us like sitting together for an hour, just eating and
mm.
talking to each other and putting the phones down. But I have to have that time blocked off in my calendar so no one can schedule with me. And I have to make it a point that I leave my phone upstairs so
Yeah,
that I'm not
that's
tempted to
beautiful.
look. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I find that I can just get so narrow, on tasks and whatever that, yeah, I
Yeah.
do have to put a reminder in my phone to eat sometimes. If I don't, I'm like ravenous by 3 or 4 o'clock and I eat everything that's
Hmm.
not for my highest good. But
Yeah.
I find when I go outside and eat, there's a different way I feel. It's like calmer and I'm taking things in and I don't know. It's for me going outside, just getting out in the sun, well, provided
Mm-hmm.
it's a good day, and having that experience with nature while I'm eating. For me, it fills me up in a different way. That it hits my energy in a different way, the food.
Oh yeah. Oh, I totally see that. Picnics are great. We should do more of them.
We should. Well, okay, so we've hit a lot of points here. I think what I would like to kind of wrap up with, if you're okay with that, is
Yeah.
just maybe give our listeners just the some of your top tips on how to, when you talk about mindful eating as just a
Hmm.
practice, as a way of life. How have you seen are ways that we can land into that in a way that doesn't completely stress us out or make
Yeah.
us feel more guilty that we're not
Oh,
doing it the right way?
totally, totally. Well, and I just have to say that like one of the best things that we can all do is drink more water and get outside more often. Like those two little things
Yeah.
really do transform our health. And even if you are concerned, and this may not be nothing's your fault, but I'm just saying that like sometimes for some of us have some issues with our hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin. And sometimes we have a hard time recognizing when we're full. And I have found that drinking like 16 ounces or so of water before a meal can actually help with that. So if you
Mm,
fall into that category, just consider that a little bit.
that's
But
great.
just sitting down with no distractions, and if possible, if you're not alone and you have some people at home with you, being able to eat socially is so amazing. I think that when we look at food as fuel, we can also look at it as an opportunity to bring other people together in a social setting. So if we can sit down with people that we love, we have our meal in front of us. I love things that are aesthetically pleasing. I try and even cooking for my kids, I make sure that there's a lot of colors on their plate so that
Mhm.
they feel good about eating it. Colors make us happy. Things that look pretty make us happy. Things that smell good make us happy. So if we can just sit down with no distractions with people that we love, and we can have that plate in front of us and just spend a minute looking at it, smelling it, and just praying, just expressing gratitude over it is so amazing. And then taking bites and actually allowing ourselves to experience the tastes that are happening in our mouths instead of being on a timeline where we just have to throw everything in our mouths really quickly before we move on to the next thing. Just really enjoying every single bite that we're putting into our mouths, chewing it well, maybe even putting our fork down in between bites, spending time chatting with our loved ones. And then when we're done, we're done. I actually, even though I said drinking water before a meal is great, I don't really recommend it during the meal because it doesn't, your food won't digest as easily as it will, like if you're hydrating before and then after. Um,
Mm,
and then something else that you can do that's amazing, if you've got, if you can build it into your schedule, if after your meal, you can actually get up and walk outside into sunlight for like a few minutes. It kind of like bookends this amazing meal. You've
mm,
hydrated, you've experienced this great meal, and then you're wrapping it up with some vitamin D, and then you can go back in and sit down. But a
love
good
it.
meal like that will leave you feeling really full and really energized.
Those are great tips and super useful. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make that a practice. Well, thank you, Kate, so much. I think we could have kept going on and on and on and on. I think just the bottom line of find a way of eating that feels good to you.
Hmm.
And don't get too locked into one way, one program, one way of eating. I know we hear a lot about the 80-20 rule, and I think that's smart.
Hmm.
We know what's going to happen if we eat the broccoli versus the Snickers. Like, no one needs to pound that into us anymore. Like, we get it.
Right.
Most of us know how it will affect us. But at the same time, like you said, eating should be pleasurable. It should be a way. You love food, right? And you
Hmm.
don't have a weight problem. And it's because you've developed this healthy relationship with it. It's not your enemy anymore. It's your friend and you love it. And
Hmm.
you've connected to the experience of eating in a way that makes you feel alive. And I feel like it doesn't matter what anyone weighs. If they have, if they're not guilting themselves and they feel good in their body and they love to eat, great. don't let anyone else dictate to you what you should weigh or how you should, what you should eat.
Exactly.
Yay. Well, awesome. Thanks, Kate. These were awesome points and things to ponder. I'm going to kind of regroup with myself and look at how I might be not shaming myself necessarily, but actually not having the healthiest conversations with myself if I quote unquote fall off of the health wagon. So
totally.
This is super helpful. Thank you.
Totally. Food neutrality and, yeah.
Awesome. As you walk your soul path to freedom, really, you got to eat, right? So might as well make peace with it. And I know it's a journey for all of us. I'm certainly on it. My weight fluctuates. I definitely don't want to beat myself up, define myself in the way of the scale or the numbers on the scale. So I think it's just about finding fullness in other arenas. Once you become full, you're filled and balanced. You have calibration. You're centered. You're harmonized. And remember, we are already whole. We aren't something to be fixed. We're not broken. At our core, we're whole. We're intact. And we are filled. So we just have to access that fullness within that already lives and breathes there. So hope this week you remember your wholeness. I'm grateful for your listenership. Talk to you next time.